This is 2022's Beast. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up to a jungle as a group makes their way to a trap they set up. At the trap, a group of lions are trying to get the meat that they left there, but the group opens fire. One of the pride managed to get away, but the rest of the pride is dead. They spread out to search for the last lion, and the others reset the trap. As they make their way through the tall grass, they can tell that the lion is still waiting around for them. But after seeing the size of the footprint, they know that they have to get him before he gets them. The rest of the crew load up the dead lions, and the boss heads out in that truck while the others wait for the rest of the group. You're not about to leave me out there in the middle of the savannah with one measly rifle and a crazy, revenge-driven lion 3 times the size of me. No thank you. Sure enough, the lion takes out every single one of them, and the last one he gets ends up getting trapped in the same trap that was meant for the lion. Later, Nate wakes up in a private jet as they fly over the savannah, and he checks on his daughters, Nora and Meredith, as they get their first glimpse of the plains. Finally, they land on a private runway, and Nora can't help but complain about how hot Africa is. She can't really be surprised. We're literally taught that Africa is hot as blazes ever since we're kids. No one ever said that it snows in Africa. I think that it might be the end of the world if it snowed in the Congo. Also, it turns out that Meredith goes by Mare, and since that's shorter, we're gonna go with that too. While they're waiting, Martin arrives to pick them up, and he drives them through the same village that the girl's mother grew up in. Eventually, they arrive at Martin's house, and Nate can't believe how good it looks. Once inside, Nora can't believe that there's no Wi-Fi or cell phone service, but Martin assures her that there's plenty to see and do around the area. As they walk around the house, they find some pictures that Nate's wife took when she was in Africa, and the girls think that they're the most beautiful pictures they've ever seen. That evening, the group gets ready for dinner, and Nate goes to check on Mare. It's clear that she's having a hard time, but she's pushing through the pain. After some time, Nora walks around and notices machetes and barbed wire all over the place, but she comes over to join the conversation. Mare decides to bring up how much she's upset by Nate missing out on their mom's last year of life, but it turns out that they were actually separated. How much could he really be there for her? The whole idea of a separation is that the two people don't want to be around each other, isn't it? After the girls lay down, Nate and Martin go outside for a drink, and Nate asks Martin why he missed the funeral. Martin opens up about how he just didn't want to see Nate's wife buried in New York when she should have been buried with her people here in Africa. Even though Nate was separated from his wife, he still blames himself for not seeing the signs of cancer since he's a doctor. But Martin assures him that the cancer was going to take her whether he was there or not. The next day, Banji radios Martin about a location, and Nate and the girls come out to join Martin on a safari trip. They see all sorts of animals while they're out, and they eventually come up to an abandoned schoolhouse where Banji is supposed to be. When they get out of the car, Martin asks everyone to stay close to the vehicle, and they hop out to meet Banji. Now I see why he asked them to stay by the vehicles. Banji's watching the nearby pride on the preserve, and sure enough, they walk right up to them. Apparently Martin raised them since they were cubs, so he has an in. That doesn't mean that the rest of you are safe, though. I've seen enough videos of lions and tigers turning on their companion humans. After bonding with the males again, Martin notices that one of the females is wounded, and he thinks that it's poachers. When they get back to the car, Martin decides to hop over to a nearby village to see if they've done anything lately. During the ride, Martin explains that the poachers are going after lions now because of the black market profit, and Nora mentions the existence of anti-poachers who actually hunt the poachers. When they get to the village, Martin explains that this isn't a tourist village, and they just have to be as polite as possible. Things are a little off when they walk through and notice that the villagers aren't there, and Nate thinks that they should just get out. Suddenly, Martin warns Nate to take the girls back to the truck, but Nate rushes in the hut to find a grisly scene. Nate sends the girls to the car by themselves, and that definitely doesn't seem like the smart option after finding a hut full of dead people. Martin explains that this looks like the work of a lion, and since there are no scavengers about, he thinks that the lion is still there. Nate rushes out to see if he can find the girls, but Nora screams from a far-off place. After running around a bit, he finds Nora, and they rush to the car after finding more dead villagers. Martin starts driving all of them down the path, but they're stopped when a man stumbles in their way. Martin gets out to check on the man, and Nate follows after him. The man's from the village, and he claims that a devil did all of this. Suddenly, Martin hears a roar in the bushes, and he tells Nate to get back to the car. Nate runs back to get a medical kit for the man, and he tells Mare to try and reach someone on the radio. When Nate gets back to the man, he's already dead. I know he's a doctor and everything, but it would definitely be time to cut your losses and get back to the car. CPR's not going to replace that man's lost blood. I don't know what medical school he went to. Martin ventures farther away from the path, searching for the devil lion, and he eventually comes across a giant paw print. He hears an animal roaring somewhere in the water, and he decides to saunter in. Again, I'm no expert on African zoology, but there's hippos and crocodiles that you can't outrun in the water. I don't even think you can outrun them on dry land. That's our area of expertise. Something comes up behind him and he shoots his gun. Nate hears the shot and he starts treading towards the same direction, but he quickly runs back to the car just as a giant lion charges after him. He barely makes it inside in time, but the lion won't give up. After the lion reaches in the window, Mare starts the car and starts driving, but she only gets so far before running into a tree. Luckily, that tree keeps them from rolling off of a little cliff, but the car won't start now. Nate tries his best to calm the girls down, but suddenly Martin calls them over the walkie. Martin tells them that he's not doing too well, and he can't stand since the lion got him. Martin tells him to stay in the car because someone will come, but it's clear that he's going into shock. Nate tells him that he's going to have to cauterize his artery on his own, and he tells him to heat up his knife with his lighter. That's some MacGyver surgery stuff, but if it works, it works. Nate tells Martin that he's going to come get him, but Martin tells him that the lion is staring right at him. He thinks that he's the bait, and the lion is circling him. Mare reminds Nate about the tranquilizer gun, and they rush to assemble it. When they tell Martin that they plan to come get him, he thinks that it's a very bad idea, but he realizes that it's the only one that they have. He tells Nate that he doesn't have eyes on the lion anymore, and Nate hops out of the sunroof to search for the lion. Keep in mind, Nate is not a hunter, he's a doctor. Sure enough, Mare decides that she's going to hop out to find Martin, and the lion decides that this is a good time to pop up. Does Nate hit the lion? Of course not, he's probably never held a gun in his life. Nate manages to roll under the car and he fends the lion off until Nora actually stabs it in the butt with one of the tranquilizer darts. Meanwhile, Mare makes it to Martin and she starts helping him back to the car. Once they get back, Nate and Mare conduct a safari surgery to help Martin's leg. Points for Nora for sticking a lion in its butt. I don't know too many people who would have even rolled down the window. The tranquilizer doesn't last as long as they thought it would though, and the lion shows up nearby. The 4 survivors decide to wait it out in the car, but when night falls, Mare decides to call Nate out for old broken promises. Even Nora tells her to stop because she realizes that this isn't the time or place for that. After the girls go to sleep, Martin comes to and he asks what he missed. Nate tells him that the lions might have given up since he hasn't seen it in a while, but Martin isn't too sure about that. Martin thinks something is very wrong with this lion since he's not eating what he kills, and he assumes that the lion is doing this because poachers killed its pride. Nate tells him that he has to get his girls out of here, but Martin thinks that what they're doing is the best option. Later that night, Nate has another nightmare where he can't catch up to his wife, and he wakes up to find the water gone and the girls gone. Nate turns the headlights on to find the girls standing in front of him, and the lion gets them. Okay, this is just a series of bad dreams looped together. After all of them are done, it turns out that everyone is just sleeping the night away and everything's okay. It actually got me when the girls weren't in the car anymore though. I'll give it that. Suddenly, poachers arrive, and Nate manages to work out a deal for passage to a nearby village. All of that means nothing though when they notice that Nate's friend is Martin. It turns out that Martin is one of those anti-poachers that Nora talked about, and the poachers decide to take Nate's girls. Luckily, the lion shows up and starts taking out some of the poachers. In all of the commotion, Nate tries to see if he can steal one of the poachers' cars, but when he finds no keys inside, he decides to find the poacher that was driving. Nate's just a doctor, and a good one too by the looks of Martin's leg. That doesn't mean that he can take on poachers or shoot a gun though. We've already seen how he shoots. He gets credit for having the balls to go out there searching for keys though. Nate comes across a few dead poachers, but none of them have the keys he needs. Eventually, Nate finds the poacher that he thinks has the keys, but he realizes that the lion is nearby. Just then, his radio goes off, and he has to climb a tree to avoid the lion. Ah, is that a black mamba in the tree with him? Nate's kind of the next best thing. He literally drops the snake on the lion, and I'm starting to wonder how many doctors have special skills like this. Back at the car, one of the poachers tries to get in, but Mare makes sure that he can't. In an attempt to help their dad, Mare starts beeping the horn of the car to attract the lion, and she does this at the best possible time, since the lion is cornering Nate in the water. After the lion leaves, Nate stumbles upon the poacher that has the keys, and he takes them from his pocket. Then Nate radios back to Nora, and he tells her that he has the keys. Before he heads back, he takes the poacher's gun though. Back at the car, the other 3 try to ration the water, but suddenly, the lion comes back. As the lion attacks them, Nora and Mare are able to run over to the poacher's car to hide. But the car Martin is in finally tumbles down the hill with the lion inside. After a moment, the lion gets back to its feet, and it tries to come inside to get Martin. Martin notices a gas leak though, and he sets himself and the lion on fire. We about to get a burnt lion like the dogs from Resident Evil? Soon, Nate makes it back to the girls, and he finds that Mare got cut by the lion during their entanglement. He tends to her wound for a moment before turning his attention to the fiery crash at the bottom of the hill. He knows that Martin didn't make it, but he has no idea about the lion. After a moment of silence, he heads back to the poacher's truck and starts driving back the way that they came the day before. During the drive, Mare's wound seems to be giving her problems, and Nate tells her to hold on as best as she can. Eventually, they pass the pride that Banji showed them yesterday, and they know that the abandoned schoolhouse is nearby. When they get to it, Mare thinks that they should keep going, but Nate doesn't want her to run out of gas with her in this state. At this point, if they run into the lion one more time, they're done for. That truck has no back to it at all, and 2 of them are injured. Nate searches for supplies to dress Mare's wound, but all they find is evidence of how bad these poachers are. Eventually, Nate finds an old medical box with a little bit of clean gauze and an old bottle of alcohol. As he cleans the wound, he explains to Mare what he's doing and why he's doing it, and he assures her that she's going to be okay. After tying off her wound, Nate looks around for a little bit of water since she's dehydrated, but he doesn't realize that the lion followed them all the way back there. The lion goes into the part where Mare and Nora are hiding, and they call for Nate to rescue them. Nate fires off 2 rounds and misses both of them. Go figure that those were the last 2 rounds in the gun too. At least he was able to scare it off for a moment. Nate takes the girls to another part of the school and he closes all of the entrances. He tells the girls that they're not going to make it if they stick together right now, and he hugs them one last time before going outside. As soon as he gets outside, he starts banging his knife on everything to get the lion to follow him, and he leads him out onto the open plain. Who thought they'd be watching a doctor versus lion wrestling match today? Not me. Nate's definitely losing, but he's holding his own better than anyone else we've seen so far. He's lucky that the lion was hurt during the explosion, but he's even more lucky that the friendly lions from Banji's Pride are there to help him. I feel like this is way more punishment than any human could actually take. As Nate passes out, Banji arrives with help and tranquilizers. Nate ends up waking up in the hospital, and Mare and Nora are there to greet him. Nate explains that he led the lion into the other lion's pride land, and the rule of the jungle took over. After some time, the 3 of them head back out into the savannah to take one last family photo in the same fashion that their mother took a picture years before. Then the credits roll. Really, I didn't think that this movie was going to be much more than 3 people trapped in a car, but it ended up being so much more. This was surprisingly enjoyable, and I definitely recommend it. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.